we're looking at the session from Flyin J from Sunday. I'm in Ableton Live, and I basically put all the tracks, the whole session, in one file. And I just put all the songs on the same timeline. Let's try this. And then you can see where we had some takes. We had multiple takes during tracking the instruments, and then we overdubbed the best take with vocals and extra guitars. So here's the, we'll jump ahead to Glitter Rock City, which is up here. So let me play a little bit of it. Okay, so in this group of tracks, I have drums. Got kick drum. What's this? It's a spare track. Get rid of it. There's snare drum, tom 1, the high tom, tom 2, the floor tom, and then 2 overheads, left, right. And then I've routed them to this one track in stereo. So I do all the, I control the overheads on this track. And then I have a room mic for sort of drum ambience. It's full of guitar because the guitar amp was really loud, but it gives it some live sound. This is the scratch vocal track, which won't be in the final mix. Here's the bass track. I just mic'd up the bass amp with an SM57 and put a blanket over it. And then I've grouped all the guitar tracks. So we have the original live track, and then we have some overdubs for the solo, and another rhythm track overdub. And here are the vocals, the main lead vocal, and then Jeremy doubled the vocal, and then this is actually tambourine. I just put it on this third vocal track. And normally what I should do is create a track in the drum group for, I'm gonna rename it tambourine, and then I'm gonna take this sample and then gonna drag it up there. Oop. Okay, it's up here. Let's make sure that came through. So I'm gonna solo the drums, and let's hear how that sounds. I'm gonna crank it up a bit. What's this?
Get out of there. What are you doing?
Sounds pretty cool. Okay, these are the vocals. Looks like there's a big mess right there. It's like probably somebody stepped on the mic stand. So I'm going to just edit that out. Okay. Let's hear how it sounds. It's crazy. It's like it overloaded the mic amp when you stepped on it, and then it phases in there, makes a weird, crazy sound. Maybe we can't use it. Maybe we can. It's a more normal sound. I'm going to swap these two. So I'm going to take that, put it down here, take that, put it up here. Well, we'll do that for now. All right. So we're going to have to do some fiddling with the guitars, but let's just hear how things sound. Well, I'm going to go through and look at each track. On the kick drum, got a compressor. Oh, the other thing I did is I went through and I compared the kick track with the overhead track. I'm just going to move it up here so they're next to each other. Oops, undo that. Okay, I'm going to move this thing up. So, okay, we're going to zoom in, and I want to get these in phase. So here's the kick drum mic. This bump is the first kick hit. And if we zoom way in, we can see there's a little bump there in the overhead mic. Let's hear. There's like a kick in there and then also a cymbal, but this wave here is the kick. Interesting. Okay, so it's like, looks like it's out of phase with this kick. So what am I going to do about that? I think maybe I will flip the phase on the overheads. So phase left, phase right. So flip. Now, let's see where this attack happens here, and where it starts over here. The selection is about 3 milliseconds. Got that right? No. How did I do this? Yeah. So let's look at that peak. So this peak, yeah, it's like 2 milliseconds before this peak and this peak are off by about 2 milliseconds. You know what? I'm gonna leave, well, not flip the overheads. I'm gonna flip the kick phase. Oop. So I want these in phase, which means this microphone was several feet away from the kick drum. It was above the drum kit, and this mic was right in the front of the kick drum, so it's much closer to the head. So if they're about 7 feet away, that's about 7 milliseconds delay from the sound of the kick drum until it reaches this overhead mic. And it reaches the kick drum mic sooner. But I want them in phase, so I'm going to delay the kick drum mic by 7 milliseconds. So it so when it hits so that thump hits at the same time in the mix, and it reinforces each other. So get this back. So I'm going to solo the those two tracks, the overheads and the kick, and we're going to listen to it for a second. Just going to loop that. Now, let's turn off the flip. Now it should be meteor with this delay and the flip in it. It's pretty subtle, but it's a little meteor and a little less blurry when they're in phase like that. Yeah. It's more like 18. This must, oh, that's the snare. Yeah. Yeah, okay. And so earlier I did the same thing with the snare drum. There's a 4 millisecond delay, represents the delay between the snare mic and the overhead mics. So I delayed the snare by 4 milliseconds. So the snare attack hits the mix from both mics at about the same time, so they reinforce each other rather than competing with each other. And I did the same with the two toms as well. So the idea is these overheads are kind of getting the whole picture, and then these individual drum mics are like beefing up the sound. Okay, so let's hear the whole drum kit. Yeah, okay, sounds good. So in the kick, I've got these delays. I've flipped the phase. I've got a compressor. Let's hear how that sounds. Hear how it makes the kick meteor. It thickens up. It basically extends the attack. So instead of like this short thing, it brings up the sound of these vibrations after the initial thump. So it makes the sound longer, basically. And that makes it sound bigger and thicker. And then the EQ, like this low mid-range tends to sound boxy on a drum. So you kind of scoop some out, and then this is sort of the deep part of the kick, and it makes it sound thick and so it's good to boost it. And then the kick also usually has some click to it, which is up here in the upper mid-range and the high end. So let's hear that. Sounds like a cardboard box, and then we add the EQ. It's like all thick and meaty. And then there's this saturation rack, and basically it's more thickening. It's like distortion, like you would have on guitar, but not quite as dramatic. And so it thickens the sound some more. Let's hear that. It's pretty subtle, but it's definitely there. So snare drum, same thing. There's a delay. I have a noise gate, which reduces the sound in between snare hits, because the snare drum mic is picking up all the drums and cymbals and everything. So this kind of reduces that, ducks it out in between snare hits. So let's hear that. It's pretty subtle. I have it set so it's not reducing that much, but it's sort of cutting out, it's sort of accentuating the snare hit and reducing some of the background noise. So saturation, same kind of deal. It's just a little distortion. Kind of thickens the sound a little. And then reverb gives it like after, makes it sound big. Let's hear it. Makes it sound like it's in a big room. It's pretty huge difference. That's very dry. And now we're in a space. Okay. So this analog tape channel strip, it's basically, it's like saturator and compressor. So it's more thickening. Let's hear it. Pretty dramatic. Let's see. And then I have this compressor that I turned off because I didn't need it. This analog channel strip was giving us a lot of compression and thickening. So, and then there's EQ at the end. So it makes the snare, I made it much brighter. I wanted more like high end to make it sound exciting. And then I kind of rolled off the low end, picks up a little bit of the kick drum mic, and which I don't really need. It just blurs the kick. So high pass, and then a shelf to kind of bring this way up, and then a sort of a hump in the high mid-range. So let's hear that. EQ off and on. Yeah, sounds way more exciting with that. And then the toms, it's a little simpler. The toms only get hit a few times, so they're not as critical, but let's hear it. Let's hear what they sound like. So normally I'd put a noise gate in here. Maybe I'll do that. I'll just steal this noise gate off of the snare drum. Stick it in here. So I've got a delay, 3.95 milliseconds for get it in phase with the overheads. And that. Okay. Let's put a gate on the other tom. How that sounds. So basically it turns those mics down. When you're not hitting the toms. Okay, so both these toms have a compressor and some EQ. Let's hear these. Thickens it up. Makes it sound more exciting. Okay, and then the overheads. Here's where I basically have this overhead track, and it takes its, I route the left and right. How did I do this? I just muted these is what I did. And then here this tap that pulls the inputs from these two tracks, and then process this stuff. Oh, it's processing. Let's get rid of that. So here we go. Here's the overheads. It's really distorted. Not sure why it's so distorted. Is it just the recording software? I don't know. Anyway, there's a compressor and some EQ. I'm kind of, the overheads are mostly pointed at the cymbals, so I'm kind of accentuating the high end and rolling off the mids and bass, because I mostly just want to have these overheads to get the sizzle of the cymbals, and I'm relying on these close mics for the drums. So let's hear it. The compressor kind of de-emphasizes the drum hits and brings up the cymbals because they're more of a washy sound. If we can hear that. And then the EQ. You can hear there's a lot more sizzle when I put on the EQ. Okay, and let's hear this tambourine. I'm just going to borrow the compressor and the EQ from the cymbals, from the overheads. I don't know. Sounds fine. Sounds like a tambourine, more or less. So, okay. And then we have this room mic. So I put it sort of way over on the other side of the rehearsal space in that first band's area on the floor. And it's just hearing just the sound of the room from far away. Let's hear it. So you can hear the drums, especially the snare, and a shitload of guitar. The guitar was super loud, even though we covered it in blankets and and rubs coat. But there's still a good amount of drums in there. So what did I put on this? I put a gate. Oh, what I did, it's triggered by this snare. So basically, I want to accentuate the snare drum. So I have a side chain from the close snare mic that opens the gate every time he hits the snare, and then in between snare hits, the room sound fades out quite a bit. It's kind of subtle, actually. It's got a long release, so it's not doing that much, but there's a delay. Let's see, 36 milliseconds. So basically I'm trying to make it sound further away and more echoey. So let's hear it. I guess in the context of the whole mix of the drums, it'll sound different. Let's see what it sounds like with the delay. So here's the whole drum. Yeah, it just makes the sound it more like a longer echo and bigger, basically. So there's the gate, and then here's the EQ. So let's just hear the room sound on its own. So I'm mainly interested in the low mids and mids for the room sound, because it makes the high end sounds a little trashy when it's delayed a lot. So I'm cutting that out a fair amount. It's like a thick boom kind of. So let's listen to the drums now. It's all together. Sounds kind of awesome. Okay. I'm going to pause the recording because it's late.